It turns out in life, you don't just all of a sudden turn a corner and then have a piece of paper that has a math fact on it, and you got to do it.
Long division, let's go!
Yeah, that's never how it is.
Welcome to Hallway Conversations. We're a trio of educators who have plenty of questions about teaching and learning and school culture, and we believe in the value of reflection and collaboration as we seek to keep growing as teachers. This podcast is our place for thinking out loud together about issues in education and why they might matter to Christian educators. Welcome to the conversation.
Hello everyone, welcome to the 88th episode of Hallway Conversations. My name's Matt Beamers.
I'm Abby DeGroat.
And I'm Dave Mulder.
Friends, we're always looking for topics of conversation and feedback, so please email us or send us a recording of your question to hallwayconvospod@gmail.com. That's hallwayconvospod@gmail.com. We're looking for relevant and timely ideas, so please let us know if you have a show topic ruminating around in your head. Dave and Abby, maybe because of my love of hockey statistics, I am a numbers guy. I love numbers. I think about numbers. I'm actually very good at making calculations in my head. I can remember random numbers about random things. In fact, I was one of the fastest people in my elementary class, John Ox Christian School, grad 85, at Mathletes and other games where someone had to be the fastest. Although I admit I could never beat Nick Nord or Bruce Griffune. Those guys were not only good guys, they were good at everything, including addition and subtraction. But when I got into high school, I realized something else. I was good at numbers, but I wasn't that great at math. And so I spiraled quickly. I went from feeling good about math at the beginning of grade 8 in high school to being permanently kicked out of math class around January of my grade 10 year. My confidence and my love for math diminished quickly.
Yeah.
I took one more math class in high school, and honestly, through God's grace, met a teacher named Mr. Bolins who provided high accountability, and I mean high accountability, and high support, and I do mean high support. I don't know that I've ever loved math again, but I love Mr. Bolins, and he loved and believed in me, and my math story had as happy an ending as possible. And quite honestly, to this day, I still love numbers, but not math. I share that because today I want to talk about math and teaching math. As a principal, I've had numerous conversations with teachers, students, and parents about math. Everything from the math is too hard, the math is too easy, why doesn't my child have math homework, why do they get so much math homework, and more often than not, and especially lately, concerns about children having math anxiety, something I've seen one of my own children struggle with. So today we invited Dr. Val Zonnefeld to join us. First of all, Val is a friend, and she is also professor of mathematics at Dordt University, with her expertise being in math education. And yes, she is an expert, and I don't say that lightly. My own daughter has been in her class and been blessed by her. Val is passionate about high-quality mathematics instruction and loves exploring this with pre-service teachers. Prior to teaching at Dordt, she spent 12 years in middle and high schools teaching various subjects and coaching. She also serves as the principal investigator for a $1.2 million National Science Foundation NOICE grant to support pre-service STEM teachers. Yes, you heard that right, a $1.2 million grant to support pre-service STEM teachers. Val, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks. This is bucket list stuff.
Bucket list stuff. Yeah, for us too.
Yeah, that's right.
So friends, my opening question is for each of you, and because of time, I'm going to ask you to keep it somewhat short, but I would like to hear from all of you. And I realize that many people have a math story. So even before we started recording, Val noticed I had a physical reaction talking about math class. And it's true. I know that about myself. So I have my own story, and I've shared a bit about it. I'm wondering, Dave, if maybe I can start with you. Share a bit of your math story. How did you experience math?
Yeah.
And how does that impact you, if it does at all, even today?
So, the school that I attended growing up, we had a tracked math program starting in second grade.
Second grade?
Starting in second grade. So, we never...
That is early.
I think so, too, looking back. But, this was kind of the interesting part of it. So, we were kind of sorted into 3 sections, and there was, relatively speaking, the high achieving, the normal achieving, and the lower achieving group.
So, a sorting hat based on test scores.
It really was.
Could you
starting
ever
in grade
move
2.
from lower to higher?
Theoretically, but practically speaking, no. No one really did. And that's the interesting part of my story, right? So I was placed in the high achieving group, but I'm pretty sure I was the lowest achiever in the high achieving group. And if I had been in the middle group, I would have thought myself good at math. But because I was in that high achieving group, I thought for my whole elementary middle school career, I thought I was not good at math. And the greatest irony, and this is proof God has a sense of humor, I ended up as a math teacher, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's part of my story too, because my experience, feeling like I'm not good at this and I don't understand this, meant I was very empathetic as a math teacher for the kids who struggled. And so I do. It's a joke, but it's no joke. That's God's grace in my life that I ended up as a math teacher, because I had a lot of empathy for kids who say, I'm not a math person. Well, I mean, if you do math and you're human, you're a math person. So everyone's a math person, right? But that's part of my story.
Yeah, interesting. Thanks, Dave. I am not a math person, but thanks for saying that. And that's I actually have a question about that later.
Sure.
So yeah, that's interesting. Abby, how about you?
Yeah. I said, I don't know that I've ever thought about this. So it's an interesting question. I didn't particularly love math growing up, but I was decent at it, right? So I could do the work. When I was in 6th grade at our small Christian grade school, I got selected for the math beat, and we had coaching, an adult from outside of the school came in with our team, so we felt very sophisticated about that. We actually did very well. Our team went to the state math bee. There was a hotel involved, if I remember correctly.
Shocking.
So that I think bolstered it. I did fine in it all through high school. I did good on standardized test scores. It never really captured my first love or interest, right? So I was an English person, English teacher. That was kind of where I lived. I could always do the math, but I didn't always love the math. I have a child who suffers from math anxiety. She's also decent at it, but has so much emotion tied up in it. And that has been, I'd say, more of my journey in the last 2 years, is trying to help her work through some of that. Which
Interesting.
I feel like it kind of started with COVID, honestly, and
Probably.
she was a 3rd grader, and just some of that has continued to follow her. So that's been interesting for me as a parent. Yeah.
Val, welcome to the show. So maybe just share a little bit about your own. I mean, you're a math professor now, so somewhere along the line things went well. Can you share a bit?
I love math. I also did the math bees, and I was called a mathlete. We went to state
nice.
and did math counts,
Nice.
and just always loved it. But I wouldn't really say always, and I always share this with my pre-service teachers as well. In kindergarten, I didn't know how to count, and so they really wanted to hold me back.
Wow.
But I was too tall. So that I always share that with my students, because they're like, well, there's this whole idea that math ability is innate. And you mentioned earlier math person or not, and that's just so dangerous.
It's insidious.
It
really.
is, because there's no such thing.
Right.
It may come a little faster to some students, but everybody can get it. So anyway, I've just always loved math and enjoyed the challenge, and a little too stubborn to give up on a hard problem.
Yeah, and I think that's why I love it too. I love the figuring out, right? The problem solving aspect of it.
So Val, how about your even in just pursuing it into college and your doctorate? What just sort of allowed you to flourish and grew your love for it, if I can ask?
I think I'm stubborn. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I mean,
Tenacious.
Yeah,
Right?
tenacious. Because one of the practice standards that the NCTM has, or Common Core, I should say, is being persevering and problem solving, and I think that really is what sets apart those that are better at math, just that they don't give up so quick. But there's also a story of God's grace, because my freshman year of college, I shouldn't have been in calculus. I ended up having Arnie Veltkamp as my advisor, just, random, they kind of randomly give you an advisor, and he looked at me and he's like, yeah, you should take calculus. And I never questioned him.
Yeah.
I should have pushed back and said, no, I'm going to be a Spanish teacher. And he put me in calculus, and I was like, oh man, I need to keep doing this.
Yeah.
So that made a huge impact on you.
Yep.
Huh.
Yeah.
Val, as a high school assistant principal, back in the day when we had parent-teacher conferences, it was a bit casual, and all the teachers sat in the gym, and the parents would line up for a chat. They could just line up wherever they wanted to talk to whoever. To this day, And as we got ready for this, I was struck by how long the line was always for the math teacher. Like, it was crazy. Like, people would just literally wait an hour.
Yep.
It was sort of like, if you talk to one teacher before you leave the gym, make sure you talk to the math teacher. And I'm just so curious, like, in your mind, why does that play such a prominent place for parents, for kids? It feels like almost like this gatekeeper course, and maybe it is. I don't know.
Yeah, there's literature that mathematics is gatekeeper. There's actually quite a bit of literature on algebra being the gatekeeper to higher education.
Interesting.
So that's not just a feeling. There's literature on that. The idea that parents want to check in, I think because the parents have anxiety. And there's a lot of research on how parental anxiety passes down to their students. And I was listening to you talk about how long the line was for the math teacher, and in my mind I was like, well, it could be half as long. I could fix it. And the way I would fix it is when the parents sit down that they don't tell about their ability. Because so many conferences started with the first few minutes where they would just start talking about how math was to them, either good or really bad. And I wanted to just say, I want to talk about your student, not you. Not in a callous way, but their identity of being a math person or not, they very much felt portrayed on their child.
Do you think that's different than other subjects?
I think that mathematics has a very fixed mindset. If you're thinking about growth mindset, fixed mindset with Carol Dweck, mathematics has one of the higher fixed mindset rates in it. And so since we have this whole idea that they're a genius and mathematics ability is just innate, then people just have a lot more of that that struggle there.
It's so interesting, right? Because I was thinking about that. Like, I don't help my kids with their math homework, and I never had, even when I knew I could do it. And I was thinking about that, like, and I know it comes out of my own security. Like, I make jokes still to this day. I even did in my undergrad class about not being a math person, or my brain isn't wired for math. And as you're speaking, Val, it makes me think is how we talk about math is important.
It's big. It's especially it's real big.
So how should we talk? Like, what is the right? Because I feel that insecurity. And yet and so I'm just saying, like, so how should we talk about math with our students?
I don't think that parents should say that. And I don't want to say that because you just said it, but I think that it's contagious. Like, math anxiety is contagious. There's research
I believe that.
where it passes down. There's also research where teachers' math anxiety passes down.
That's interesting.
This specifically female teachers' anxiety passes to female students.
Wow.
It's been proven in numerous studies, and so that's why it's so important, especially for my pre-service teachers, to gain their self-efficacy and to feel confident, even though they might not claim it's my thing and I love it, but still, how can they feel confident in it?
This is one of the things that I've thought a lot about. So I've taught our elementary science methods course a lot of times, and there's similar literature around science education that, teachers' self-efficacy for their ability to teach that content area impacts directly. So how do we go about turning the tide for that? Are there things that you do? I know you teach a lot of our math courses for elementary ed majors, and you teach a lot of the methods courses for math education. So what kinds of things can we do in teacher preparation even, or for practicing teachers, to try to turn the tide on that story? Are there specific things? Yeah, I think it's so important that your classroom is safe. Because we just need to normalize making mistakes. The way that you learn mathematics is making mistakes. Eventually the mistakes go away, that's the goal, but like, you haven't done this before, you're going to make mistakes as you start to learn how to do it. And so it's important that we make that safe. And the way that we can make our classroom safe is we don't want to tease people or make fun of them or have it be overly competitive. There is a place where competition can be good. Some of the things I think about in my class is make sure that the students know each other. And I never want to put just one student at the board showing the answer, but it's always a group, because it's safer. Also, like, when they're working in class on a problem, kids will they'll be so much riskier on a whiteboard
than they will be on paper.
Interesting.
That's fascinating.
That's been researched as well. So whiteboards are super helpful for taking that risk as well. So if you got multiple students and everybody's doing it at the same time, they'll chance making that mistake, because the mistake is where they're going to learn.
But is it something about the ease of changing their mind when you're on a whiteboard, where
There's
it feels a little more permanent somehow on paper?
There's no record.
That's interesting.
No record.
That makes
and
sense to
sometimes,
me.
I got to get them. Sometimes students will come, when I get near them, they'll quick erase it. I'm like, no, let's learn from this.
Yeah.
And so embracing mistakes as a place where we can figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
But if I think about that, and so this is probably really old school. Like, I'm all about, hey, normalizing making mistakes. I love that. And yet in my mind, all I'm seeing is my own math test where the answer is either right or wrong.
Yeah.
And so then it's like, well, how can I make mistakes when in the end I'm being assessed on whether I make mistakes or not? So I'm trying to figure out, you know what?
Yeah.
I'm trying to reconcile that a bit, because I'm all about that. And yet,
Yeah.
2 + 2, it's either right or wrong, or not, or maybe the question I have, Val, is then what does good assessment look like in math? Maybe
Right.
that's the question I'm wondering about.
Yeah. So let's think about, you want your kid to learn how to walk. You don't just stand them up and expect them to walk away. The first time they fall, you don't go, man, you really stink at walking, and then give up on them and fail them for life. So similarly in mathematics, you've just exposed them to something new. We have to expect they're going to fall a lot. So that means that when we are grading, that those first attempts, they probably shouldn't count for much, or maybe just completion or something like that. So eventually, at some point, there has to be some summative assessment, but early on, it should be very much formative and not count for much, because they're going to fall.
Sure.
If they're not falling, you're teaching
Right.
something that's too easy.
People always say practice makes perfect, but really maybe practice makes permanent is a better way of thinking about it, right?
Yeah.
And so, you're going to practice things, and you're going to get feedback on things, and we get better over time.
Yeah. So mistakes are they're awesome.
Yeah.
And if you can get to a place where the kids let you look at their mistakes and point, hey, what's going on with this student? So powerful. But that classroom has to be so safe for that to happen.
Right.
So I have students I have kids, obviously, who are in math class, and I have noticed so much more process orientation
Yes.
in their math homework than I remember from my schooling days. Is that a Common Core emphasis? Is that just we know more about math? My first grader is doing things that I did not do conceptually, right? And I love it. Because I feel like that builds so much more capacity for later on. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I also have heard parents complain about it a lot. I love it, but I can look at it like an educator. Right?
Yeah, so just a quick note on the parents. They complain because they don't know how to help, I
Right.
think.
Yeah.
They feel insecure. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to help. But math has definitely moved more towards a conceptual understanding. Because if it's just procedural, it's all memorization.
Right.
None of it makes sense. I just need to memorize what to do now, what to do now, what to do now. And so math is definitely pushing towards conceptual. We see that in the Common Core as well. And that's what the research is saying is sticky. It sticks with kids. They know how to approach a problem that's maybe a little bit different, or a situation that's, not phrased the same. So that's definitely where it's going.
Does that come back to what you were saying before about persevering in problem solving, or being more patient with their problem solving, right? If they have stronger math reasoning skills, and it's not just, here's how I attack a problem. When I see this kind of problem, I'll do this. Learning an algorithm.
No, they can be flexible and apply it to different situations, because it turns out in life, you don't just all of a sudden turn a corner and then have a piece of paper that has a math fact on it, and you got to do it.
Long division, let's go.
That's never how it is. You need to pull things together, decide what's important, what am I going to do with these numbers, and that's ultimately what we want.
Val, we've mentioned math anxiety a few times here, and we sort of touched on it and related to language and but what are some other practical things for teachers or even parents who have kids who have that math anxiety is real? I don't know how to help my child. It's like making mistakes is okay, but you don't understand. Like what practical advice could you give to educators or parents to say, here's some things that help with anxiety, and if you, to put you on the spot, things that actually probably don't help with math anxiety.
Yeah, so it is real. Like we have to know that it's real. In fact, there have been brain scans of students that are having math anxiety, and the same part of the brain lights up as the part that when you have physical pain.
Oh, interesting.
Wow.
So it is a real thing. I have students with it. I have a child with it. So I'm aware of it. One of the things I help my students understand is the fact that when you're doing math, you're using your working memory a ton. And your working memory is the part that just holds little pieces of chunks just for a few minutes. If you think about, okay, I'm going to regroup this up here, you have to keep all these things in your brain. When you're experiencing anxiety, your working memory turns off. When you're like it just floods it. I don't know what the chemical things are, but it floods it. And so I don't know if you've ever had that experience of like, I can't think of anything. What is 2 + 3? And like there's just nothing up there. There isn't anything up there because their working memory turned off.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so it's really important that they feel safe and that they feel comfortable. And just to be aware of it, there are lots of things you can do. Like on an assessment that's going to be more summative, start with a question they know. So they don't freak out right away. Don't take your hardest question and put it first, because you might be putting them into that mind frame of anxiety. Start with something everybody should get right, so that they build up their confidence and then can get into it. Often during tests, I'll stay, 20 minutes in. All right, put your tests over, and then we stand up and rub our brains or do some kind of a strange stretch or whatever, just to bring that anxiety down again, get their physical body moving.
No, that's really helpful. I'm just thinking about you with your pre-service teachers, or I'm thinking to some of our listeners who are maybe new to teaching math, or some of our veteran teachers who it's not their sweet spot for a lot. Like if you're talking to your pre-service teacher, are there a few things that you're like, hey, here's some hallmarks of good math pedagogy, or here's something, hey, like try to implement this into your lesson, or again, just like maybe like pedagogical moves that might be helpful just as a teacher.
Yeah. So there are resources out there. If you go to the Common Core, there are the 8 mathematical teaching practices. And those are things that you should just think about, like, are my students getting a constant diet of this type of teaching?
Right.
And the practice standards are what we want our students to be able to do on the back end. But what I really want to say is, if you think about your math teaching, are your students thinking? So whatever that pedagogy is, it doesn't do much to watch somebody else do math. It's pretty easy to watch somebody else do math, but like, who is doing the thinking there? If we want them to be able to do math, then they need to be doing it, and that's what needs to be happening in the classroom. Now, how you support that, how you scaffold it, that can change from topic to topic and day to day, but like, just watching you and then copying that exact same way, that's not thinking, that's mimicking.
What would you say in your own pedagogy, or like if I taught math, I just think I would probably do it the way I did 20 years ago. So are there anything that you'd say, hey, we might want to avoid this in math pedagogy? And we don't mean it as a criticism for our listeners who nobody gets it right all the time, but just to say, hey, we might want to stay away from doing this, or just practices that we might want to avoid.
Yeah, so I talked to a lot of students over the years, and so many of them have a story like you, Matt, where they have this moment. And it's been referred to as a math trauma, where something happened and then they often don't recover because math builds so much. And so
can't climb out of the hole.
They can't climb.
That is exactly. I just remember that moment of like, they're moving on without me, and I'll never catch up. And then I gave up.
You gave up on it, and that has happened to so many students. And so at the upper levels, that means you need to help them take that baggage off and that identity of I can't do math. But one of the practices that comes up again and again in that time when they kind of quit is time tests. And I know people love time tests, and fluency is super important, but it can be pretty harmful.
Any sort, even if they're competing against themselves. That's my question, I guess.
So practices that like students have recounted to me, is when they have a rocket and the rocket launches as they get more right, or an ice cream that gets dips on it and it's on the wall, or my class couldn't get pizza because I couldn't fill in my piece of the pizza. And so those public things are pretty hard for students. Against yourself, that's healthy. Am I getting better each day?
Am I getting more?
But publicly can be pretty.
You raised a really interesting idea there, though. We want math fluency, right?
Yes.
Like we want that. So, are there particular strategies if we're going to like avoid the mad minute or time test or things like that? What kinds of things can teachers do that build math fluency for kids?
Yeah, that's great. So, the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics they love fluency.
Yeah.
But they would say don't do time tests. What they're pushing for is not to memorize, but to understand deeply. So if you're struggling with the fact 8 times 7, rather than memorizing it, what's another way you can get to 8 times 7? And so you can say, well, if I take 7 and double it, that's 7 times 2. And then if I double that, that's 7 times 4. And then if I double that, that's 7 times 8. And so build all these strategies to get there, and it will come through the strategies.
Sure.
And pretty quick, it's just in your brain. But you know how to get there if it were to leave your brain for that moment.
Right.
Val, Dave has this saying that I've really latched onto about no more crappy homework.
Oh, yeah.
And I've really embraced that.
brother.
My question is, okay, so I did teach math for 1 year,
You
actually.
did?
I did.
Is this
And-
wow.
No, I did. I did teach it for 1 year in middle school. And to not overanalyze it, there was probably actually some healing in it for me.
Good.
And I really mean that. But one of the things that I struggle with, and I'm smiling as I tell this, is I had no concept of good homework. So it often looked like 30 seconds before the bell rang, page 221, do all the odds.
Yep.
Or do all the evens.
Depends on what's in the back of the book.
Right, I was going to say, did you pick the ones with the answers or without the answers? Yeah.
So I confess that. So while it was a healing exercise, I gave really bad homework. But my question is, what does good math homework look like? Or what is the purpose of it? And what is crappy math homework look like? I gave an example of what it looks like. Well, and should it be the same for everyone? Should everyone do 20 questions?
So good. Yeah, so should everyone do 20 questions if, your high-flying student understood it in 2 questions?
Yeah.
And there are some high achievers in math that hate math because it's so boring. Why do I have to do another how many questions when I knew how to do it on question 1 and 2?
Yeah.
And for the kids that it's a real struggle, doing 20 questions might take their night away.
Right.
So I like the idea of compacting the curriculum where students have different amounts of homework they do, and then maybe they get to explore something cool in that extra time. That takes more to set up. I only did that 1 year. It definitely takes more. The purpose of homework is so that they get a chance to practice and get good at it. That's what fluency means, that you can do it without having to put all your thinking into it. But math homework, I think, is cheated on more than any other homework. Is that I'm just maybe dreaming?
I think you're probably right.
It's so easy to copy.
Right.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah, you can't copy somebody's reading.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Right?
You can't.
Yeah.
I think it's copied a lot. Plus, there's answers in the back of the book, or you can go online and find the answer. Like everything I teach, it's online.
Wolfram Alpha.
Oh, yeah.
Game changer.
Oh,
If you're
yeah.
not familiar, teachers, with Wolfram Alpha, just go to wolframalpha.com and you prepare for your mind to be blown.
Yeah. Type in your assignment.
I don't
and
know
see
what you were saying, so you should put that in
I'll put it in the show notes.
show
I
notes.
love it.
Because I
Love
couldn't
it.
write that down
No.
based on
Yeah.
what you just said.
So it's it will do your math homework for you.
Mathematical
And
search engine.
that's a
Okay.
good way of
Love
saying
it.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was born a generation too early. This is what I needed.
Yeah, there are apps where you can
Yeah.
just take a picture of any problem in your math textbook, and then it does the work for you.
Okay.
Not just the answer, but it shows the
Shows
work.
the steps.
So, what is the point then? And I've been reading this book, and I highly recommend.
We'll put it in our show notes.
Yeah, Building Thinking Classrooms in Mathematics by Peter Lilejal. I hope I say that right. But I heard him speak this fall, and it's been really pushing my thinking. And he did research on, who's doing homework. What's the best homework? Is the child doing it? Are they copying off a friend? Is mom and dad basically doing it? And what I mean by mom and dad basically doing it is like maybe Abby's kid is turning in the homework, but if Abby walked her child through every single step of it, did the kid really do it and will it stick? And he said, you get the most kids to do it if it's not worth anything.
Yeah,
Like it's
interesting.
he calls it not homework, but an opportunity to practice.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's kind of making me think hard. Like, should I be doing that?
Yeah.
I don't know.
And the reframe that does for students then, right? Like, I like this idea a lot because that's my beef with crappy math homework too. And I assigned an awful lot of crappy math homework, so I'll point the finger at myself first and foremost. But this allows you to kind of right size it for students. Then. What do you need? What's the opportunity you need to deepen your learning with this?
So you're ready for the next day.
Yeah.
And that's
cool.
very different.
I think that's a cross-cutting concept across subjects and content areas too, because I found students really actually appreciate very low stakes assessments and opportunities to practice, and they will do them. If I say, okay, see how much you know on this quiz, it's not going to be a huge percentage of your grade. It's just to see how much they'll be like, and I don't think they cheat on it because they want to see how much they know.
Oh, I do have to say one more thing in math assessment, though. I think that standards or mastery-based grading is huge.
Can you talk a little bit what that, in case that's new language for some of our listeners, Val?
Yeah, so I'm doing that right now with my elementary ed students. They're in numbers and operations class right now, and I want to know that they are fluent in fraction arithmetic. So they took their assessment on Monday and weren't happy with their grades. So today they had a chance again to try and get it up there.
Redos, retakes.
And they said, Dr. Z, how many do we get? I said, as many as you want.
Yeah.
So I want everybody to be able to do this.
Yeah.
Right.
So
you say, here's the clear standard you need to be able to achieve this, and then you give them feedback. You're not there yet. You're not there yet. Or,
whatever. So, and there is rejoicing in the land when they get that 100%.
That's awesome. That's fun.
Yeah.
Val, is there maybe just some final words of encouragement for our math educators out there? Like, we know it's, at least to me, it doesn't seem like a super easy subject to teach. It's complicated. There's a lot of emotions walking through the door with the students, and a lot of things to balance there. Just, I don't know, just final thoughts on teaching math in general, I guess.
Wow, I could talk a long time on that, but I guess I encourage math teachers to see the beauty that God has built into that part of creation. And if you're not seeing the beauty, keep looking for it, keep exploring, and don't be afraid to ask questions. If you don't understand it, ask the teacher next door, Google it, but to be able to help a kid learn math, there's nothing like it. Especially a student that walks in and just hates it. Yeah. And to see them move that little bit from hate to this isn't so bad or it's okay.
It's not that they have to love it.
No. When they do, that's even better. To be able to move that dial and realize that it's something that's important in their life.
Friends, we know that your time is valuable, and we want to thank you for joining us today for another hallway conversation. Whether it is this day, this week, this month, or this year, we hope that the Lord gives you what you stand in need of, and we want to send you from here with a blessing. To our listeners, may the road rise up to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face. The rains fall soft upon your fields, and until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. Thanks for listening, everyone. We hope you have a good week.
This podcast was literally dreamed up during one of our actual hallway conversations. Our music is by Ethan Mulder. Hallway Conversations is created and produced by Matt Beamers, Abby DeGroat, and Dave Mulder. Hey, we have a favor to ask of you. Would you be willing to rate this podcast or write a review in your podcast app? Or if you found this conversation interesting or helpful, would you consider sharing it on your social media? Those things really do help podcasters out, and we would be so, so grateful. Thanks for listening, friends.
Yeah.
That's great.
Right on my desk.
Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nose is running.
No, this is the magic of podcasting.
Yeah.
I always listen to the episode as I'm editing it.
Let's not edit that part. No.
Sorry. Knocking over water bottle.
Everything's great.
Man, that was fun.
Yes.
Awesome.
I would talk math education with you every Wednesday.
I love it.
You got to start a
love
math
it.
education podcast over there in mathematics department.
Man, that would be fun.
It would be. As long as I don't get to do math.
What?
When are you gonna take my class?
I can hardly teach the ones I'm teaching.
That's true. But you know how fun it would be to have you in class.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't be.
You had a physical reaction there, didn't you?
Oh yeah. What's the movie? You know Chucky?
Yeah.